Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to bring to you the Substack community. Uh, a new friend of mine who lives in Argentina, Buenos Aires, and Daniel Ferioli is a semi-retired psychiatrist, 68 years old, I believe,
Yeah.
and has had a very interesting career working with different populations, demographics, and currently is using some of his spare time in semi-retirement to work in his neighborhoods. There are some adjacent, very poor neighborhoods in Buenos Aires, applying some of the skill that he has honed during many
Mm.
decades of professional work. And also, Danielle has lived for a certain period of time in Mexico, in the south of Mexico amongst the Mayan people, and experienced and learned a great deal from the culture, the indigenous traditions and culture, and the patterns in their society, which have impressed him greatly. And so, Danielle, welcome to the Substack. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
And I know if we were to have the conversation in Spanish, it would be easier for you. However,
I'll try my English.
I appreciate that very much. And your English is pretty good. And
Thanks.
so we'll just
I
go
need to,
slow.
to, to brush it up a bit.
Exactly, right. That's why the communication that we've had up till now, I've sort of insisted on English to sort of give you that
Yeah, yeah,
practice
yeah. Yeah, that's all right.
for the
Well,
interview.
it's an universal language, isn't
Exactly, yeah. So it is more and more. But if there's a word that you can't think of, you could say it in Spanish or whatever, and I can
it?
probably
Then you
supply it.
translate.
Yeah. So we'll just go along for about half an hour. I try to keep these reasonably short so that people have time to watch and listen.
Mhm.
Um, so I'll keep my eye on the clock, and maybe when we're about 25 minutes, I'll let you
Okay.
know that we're about to start winding down.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Mental health. I myself have been a psychotherapist for many years, working with
Mhm.
very interesting clients, families
Mhm.
sometimes. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit, not too much, because I think the maybe the most interesting part will be your experience among the Mayans. But perhaps
Mm.
you could give us a quick synopsis
Yeah.
of
Yeah, yeah.
your professional experience as a
Yes.
psychiatrist, and then how you're using your
Yes.
your professional talents now.
Yes. I understand. Well, in Buenos Aires City, we have global problems that are all around the world, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, uh, makes some statistics about what's happening in Occidental world, and in all the world we have an epidemic situation of
Mm.
depressive and anxiety disorders. And what's more important, the suicide attempts, also between teenagers.
Yeah.
For instance, in my city, we have, for one assassination, we have five suicides done.
Wow.
For each attempt, for each suicide that was real, we have at least 10 attempts of suicide that didn't
Uh-huh.
arrive to the
Yeah.
death. And for each attempt, you have 100 ideas of attempting.
People who are thinking about it.
Yeah. And for each idea of dying before the time arrives, you have 1,000 people that are depressive. Yeah. Then 10% of depressive problems, disorders, they have attempts of suicide or ideas of dying, you know.
Yeah.
And this is the main problem in our city, but also in the world, as the World Health Organization, the WHO, says, and it's in the last brief of the WHO. And they don't, the WHO doesn't consider nowadays that is a brain problem, that is a neuronal problem, that is a problem of medication only. But it's due to, they say it's due to economic problems, society problems, drug addiction, and social problems, and family problems, and bonding problems between pairs, between people of the same age.
Right.
And well, this is a work in progress because 30 years ago, the thought was that the problem were the neurotransmissions and, serotonin and dopamine and noradrenaline. And well, the drugs that you give in those problems, they try to hide those three substances, but it's part of the problem. And the WHO says that, and it's a big change in the thought of the World Health Organization in 30 years, And well, what we always have thought is that in a city like in a continuous trauma like our country, because we have we have crack-ups very frequently, one each 10 years at least, and you have a very social problem in how do you go down in your level or in the society, or can go up and like a bipolar problem.
Yeah.
Uh, and our country, some people say it's a bipolar country. Like you can rise and you can get down.
Mhm.
No,
So a
uh,
question, do you feel
yeah,
that I don't know how much you traveled internationally, perhaps
yeah,
professionally,
yeah,
conferences or
yeah.
communication with colleagues in different
Yes,
lands, but
Latin America.
in Latin America. Okay, you have.
Yeah,
Great. So
yeah.
do you feel that mental health, we'll just put umbrella phrase, in Argentina is different in some ways than, for example,
No,
Brazil
no,
or Peru or
no,
Venezuela?
no. Not, it's not different.
Okay.
What is different is that in Paris, New York, and Buenos Aires, the three cities, you have too much psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and psychoanalysis. Are the three cities where more grew up those theories and those practices.
Yeah.
And then what happens? That we have more awareness of the problem. For instance, here you can have one psychiatrist in each quarter, in each four streets, at least. And in some quarters you have 100 in four streets. You know.
Hmm.
Well, then we are more aware of the problems because we receive a lot of patients, and if you don't have such a quantity of professionals, perhaps you can't take account of what's happening,
Right.
like a fisher that with the net, if the net is too big, you don't know which little fish are going in the river, are swimming in the river. Well, no, it's global. What's local problem is the big, how do you say it? Um, Not equilibrium. I mean, there's no hay equilibrio. There is no a continuous society. Like I mean, we think in Canada there are the way of living is more normal. More you don't have up breaks and down breaks and all that. Up
Well,
break is all right.
you mean politically?
No. Economically and society and social differences. For instance, you can be in a media class and you go down in 2 months, three
Oh, right,
months.
right, right. No, it's nothing like I lived in Paraguay for 5 years, right next door to
Uh-huh.
Argentina. And
Yeah.
during that time, the late 70s, whew, yeah, Argentina was a very difficult place. People were disappearing, being dropped over the Atlantic
Yes.
Ocean if they didn't agree with the government. And
Yes.
people's fortunes went up, mostly down. Inflation was 300%. The, they said, you go to check on a ticket for a bus ticket or a train ticket in the morning, and by the afternoon, it would be double the price.
Yes. The
So,
inflation.
yeah, no, in Canada, we have a lot more steadiness for
Yes.
sure. Yeah,
Steadiness. Well, we are the opposite.
right. Yeah,
And
a bipolar nation.
yes, a bipolar nation. Yes, 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 yes. Well, it is said like in economy, we are in our way of living. We are also bipolar,
Hmm.
and you can have a bipolarity in 1 week or in 1 month.
Hmm.
Well, yes, that's the difference between another countries and cities. Argentine is a name that means money. From Argentia in Latin is silver.
Oh, yes, right.
And in French, l'argent,
L'argent,
c'est les
money.
monnaies, c'est
Exactly.
le
Uh-huh.
money.
So your whole country
And
is the iconic
yes,
name is based on
yes,
materialism, you might say.
yes.
Well,
For instance,
money can be good.
Brazil is the name of a tree, you know. And
Cruzeiro
Paraguay is the name of a river.
and the language.
Yes, then we have the name of money. And that's because of the smuggling, the big smuggling that
Yeah.
historically
Okay, I'm just going to break
happened.
in.
Yeah.
I'm interested in how your experience as a psychiatrist,
Mm,
um, then, during your professional life, and now in your semi-retirement, helping people in the
mm.
more working class neighborhood or poor
Yes,
neighborhood.
yes.
Also, you had mentioned your experience among the Mayans. So, some of the strains of modern civilization, political, economic,
Mm,
urban life, crime,
mm.
violence, um, lack of trust, perhaps, affects the mental health of a large number of
Yeah,
people, leading to suicide and
yes.
many other problems. So, your experience with the Mayan people, you shared a little bit of that with me just before we pressed the record button. And I'd love the viewers to hear your experience in comparison to big city Argentina, 15, 20
Mm,
million people, and the villages or the towns down in southern Mexico, as far
mm,
as their communication, their mental health,
mm.
the
Yes,
structure of their society, and so on.
yes. The first thing I felt there was there I didn't find mental problems like in our cities.
Yeah.
And my question was why?
Hmm.
How could how how it happens? What happened to us in order to have so epidemic problems of mental health?
Right.
Well, then as I've been there during 10 years, twice a year, 1 month each time,
Mm.
more or less, in my holidays.
Ah.
And yeah, and I was a human rights observer there
Ah.
because there was a lot of assassination of indigenous people,
Right.
uh, and there was no justice for them, like if they were slaves. And well, my work was to protect the indigenous community, making briefs to the European Parliament, where Danielle Mitterrand, the the woman of Mitterrand, Danielle Mitterrand was very, very aware of this situation, and she made a lot of work for them
Mm.
from France, but also Europe. all Europe helped the indigenous people.
Uh-huh.
I mean, all the European
Hmm.
institutions that were that felt the problem, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and well, and the clues I think I found was the difference was that they were a community already made, and they were not a society of individuals, but they were a community of members. And what I find in my patients is they are alone. The more problematic patients generally are alone,
Yes.
or they have very a lot of problems with their wife, with their
Mm.
children, with their sons, and all that, and with the work. Uh, and you know, the two big columns of mental health are how do you work and how you love.
Right.
You know, work and love.
Mm.
Well, when we talk about love, is also friends, also your wife, but also friends and your parents and all that. And there is a study that says that before the symptom arises, you have an isolation of that person 4 6 months before.
Hmm.
There is a process of isolation, and or you cut the bounds between people, and in depressive problems disorders, also you are going to be more alone because you retired yourself as an animal that is sick or ill
Right.
and
Right.
goes
Yes.
to under the bed and all that.
Self-isolation. Yeah.
And isolation.
Yeah.
Well, and then you don't feel that there because they are not individuals; they
Uh,
are a community, you know.
mm-hmm.
And your problem is the problem of the community, and and the problem of the community is your problem.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
So that's a
then,
big difference between so-called Western society, where the
yeah.
individual has
Mm.
been glorified and empowered, and the rugged individualist is sort of the extreme manifestation of that in the United States. And it's being found that it doesn't work as well as it was cracked up to be. So this is
Hmm.
quite a different paradigm, correct? With
Yes,
the
yes,
indigenous people, the Mayan people. So you're saying
yes,
that rather than the identity of me as an individual, more the identity is the group, the collective consciousness or the
yes.
collective needs and activities.
And you have a group phenomena and also a community phenomena
Right,
because they think everything in groups,
right.
how to work, how to play music, for instance, the government wanted to make a gift, a television for each family in one community only, no? In one
Oh,
village.
okay.
When we talk about one village, that means more or less 500 families, more or less five people each family. That
2,500
makes,
people.
yeah, more or less. No, less than that. Sorry. 50 families then, and more or less 2.5, 2,500 people in a village.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, 50 families more or less.
Yeah.
Yes, and they didn't want that television for each home.
Ah,
And they said no, because we like to gather ourselves
ah.
to see a big television that we accept to receive, but we have it
Ah.
already.
But everybody's
because
together at the same
because in the
time.
square, yes, in the square of the village, we
Yeah.
all gather to see that film or to see
Beautiful.
that interview or all that.
Beautiful. Yeah.
The same happened with water.
Uh-huh.
They wanted an NGO wanted to make the system, the water system for each home, like we live, you know. And the women gathered in an assembly and they said no, because we want to go to the river, gathered with another women to make the laundry, because when we are without our men, we can speak about our women problem,
Right, right,
and we don't have that opportunity. Then they make they don't want the material things we need, and we couldn't live without them. It's a very big, and that makes a big difference with the spiritual way of life they have, because they don't get attached to material things. They What they wanted was only, how do you say it, a radio and the battery for the radios, and oh yes, we want that, but don't give us a
right.
television. We are going
So,
to get caught by the television.
yeah, it sounds like they're open to material things, but only if it serves the greater good, and
Yes,
not just the
yes,
individual or the individual family, but
yes,
the whole community.
yes, and they want the material things if all are going to have them,
Exactly.
not if our family or I
Right,
personally.
right. Yeah,
Uh, well, the other thing I saw was the solving of problems were all also in solved in an assembly,
right.
um, and they say they have a way of thinking. It doesn't matter who has the. It doesn't matter. No importa quién mande, sino que el que mande, mande obedeciendo lo que decidió la asamblea.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't matter who rules, but because the assembly is going to rule, and I'm going as a
Uh-huh.
chief to obey the assembly.
Right. So one person or another person they may play the role of the chairman or the chairperson or the
Chairman.
secretary or the
Yes, yes,
treasurer, but they're just temporary roles. But the
yes.
important idea for conflict resolution or decision
Mm.
making would be the group decision of the assembly or the council.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, 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 yes.
got it. All right.
And it was real because when I asked to Maximilian, uh, the permission to do this thing or that thing, to bring some camera or not, he told me, yes, I am the chiefman, but I obey the assembly, so I must consult the assembly. Next week, I'm going to give you the answer.
Yeah.
So you don't have the political problems, the
Mhm.
corruption in the
Mhm.
political system we have in our
Mhm.
democracies. Our democracy, I mean, in Occidental democracies, are not, they didn't, are not mature, are not very well done.
Mhm.
We must progress a lot because the representation system makes that you are going to make an election on two or three or four you didn't decide
Mhm.
to you understand, and in other places it's not like that. um, a chief man has no personal power. His power is the assembly. The authority is the
Right.
assembly,
Mhm.
and then he obeys the assembly.
Mhm. So it sounds like
And
also
that happens, sorry, that happens in all indigenous communities in all Latin America.
yes,
In all Latin America. And in America, I guess
right.
North America or perhaps Canada, the original people also they lived like that because they communicated that
Yes.
to all. Yes, a way of America lived like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
Before England made.
exactly. Yeah. De- Depending on in Canada, for example, there are many different indigenous communities. Sometimes they have little reservations, um, or they live in the cities. But on their reservations, especially where they're in control, um, those principles still reside within the ideology and the culture, um, and even more now than 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, the traditional spiritual teachings of their people are coming back, and so they're starting to do the ceremonies again and have local justice a
Yes,
certain limited application of justice.
yes,
So it seems like the Aboriginal or indigenous culture has a great deal to offer modern
yes.
industrial Western
And
society.
we can learn a lot. For
Right,
instance, the ecological way of life, the
right,
ecological way of life. Take, for example, the manage of the wood, of wood. They don't chop a tree because they say it's living matter.
yes,
The wood is used only when it falls or when it's without a
right,
living situation. I mean,
yeah,
and they don't do it. They really feel that
right.
it's an attempt to nature, and
Of course,
they don't make contamination. The way of life they live is very ecological. It's like an ecological principle. They say, for instance, Earth cannot be owned by man because man belongs to Earth. A man or a woman,
of course, yeah,
I mean, a human being cannot own the land because he belongs to the land and the land doesn't belong to him.
right.
He belongs to the earth, to the land. So they live in an ecological system and they think ecologically. And the agriculture is eco agriculture. It's an agriculture of
Hmm.
without a lot of toxical herbicides or we
Yeah,
say herbicides,
chemical pollutants.
chemicals,
Yeah.
chemicals. Yeah.
So you
Mm.
said before when you're talking about Western psychology
Yeah.
and psychiatry that there are the two pillars, right, of determinants, you might say, of a person's mental health, how well one is adapting, adjusting to societal pressure, love and work,
Mm.
amor y
That
trabajo.
yes, that was Freud's
Yes, okay.
proposition in 1890.
Wow, that's a long time ago. So in the Mayan community, how do these two parameters manifest, love and work? How do the Mayans love? And what does that mean in their community?
Well, it's very interesting. When parents see that at 13, 14 years old, their daughter uh, communicates a lot or is talking a lot with one another young person,
Uh-huh.
male, then their parents communicate between themselves
Right.
and they say, in Spanish, I'm going to say it, podríamos casarlos o propose them to get married, but in Spanish is casar, that means they make the house. Casarlos es hacerles la casa
Hmm.
to be together,
Ah,
They
casar. I never thought
really,
of that, that the word
yes,
casa, house is
like
within casar.
In
Mm.
English it would be like
Uh,
we are going to
right.
home them,
Yeah. Uh,
Then we are going to make the home for them,
that's right. Yeah. Very
and they
interesting.
make it,
Yeah.
and they get married at 13, 14 years old,
Wow.
you know. And when they have 24, they have children of 10 years, more or less, 9 years. And when they have 30 years old, they could be, they could have grandchildren
Yeah.
also.
All right.
And they don't separate themselves.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult because when the problem arises, that there are problems, the community make groups to study what's the problem of that family. They don't send them
Mm.
to the therapist in Mexico City or
Mm.
in San Francisco City. No. They gather themselves, and for instance, when they have a justice problem, it's a similar situation. One robbery, a robbery, or one steals to another one. They gathered every problem they gather, and they think like this.
Yeah.
They don't think what happened to that person, name and surname, that made that robbery? They said I did. What could have happened in our community
Mm.
so that this happened
Right.
nowadays?
Right. So they take
What is,
responsibility for the action
yes,
of the thief,
yes, yes,
rather than
yes.
blaming him or his parents.
Yes. Yes, they don't consider a punishment could be the most important resolution of the problem. For instance, if he robbed, he has to give back that,
Right.
and if he kills,
Mm.
he has to sustain the family because the man he produced that the man of the family is not is not living anymore.
I
Then
see.
the punishment has a logic.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not to
Okay.
punish in order to
No,
punish
no, there's
also.
that idea of equilibrium. So
Yeah.
if one man kills another man who is a father, for example, or husband, then the killer has to provide for that family. Makes
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
It's justice,
Yes,
right?
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like that.
That's great. Yeah.
And but also they think what happened to us, not only to him, what happened to us in order that this happened in our community.
Right, right. Yeah, so
What is
it's an
happening?
opportunity for some soul searching.
Yes, and all the time they have talking situations. Therapy is how to talk and how to talk with the other, not to the other. And they have that naturally,
Mhm.
culturally, but it's like natural for them. Uh, then this speech, this prolation, this continuous speaking and dialogues and gathering, and they talk about the fiesta de la palabra, how do you say fiesta in
A
English?
party celebration.
Party, the party of the words. Uh, and they have and they took all the time they need for that,
Hmm.
because the main problem is not to produce more but to the self being, I mean, and the community being, the way of living is more important.
Uh-huh.
um, well, this is what the inverse situation to our cities and with our parents. They work and work and work, and the children are a problem because they have to work more and because they have to have time to go to work,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then you must send them to school and all that. The school there, the parents participate in the classroom.
Right.
Because yes, and they talk about they talk with the teacher, and the teacher talks
Yeah.
with the pupils and with the parents of the pupils. That was wonderful. They
Well,
are open. They are open schoolrooms.
it's a more organic system. And of course, you're talking about populations that are much smaller, 2,500 people.
Yes,
It's more possible to do that than in Buenos Aires, which is a city of almost 20
yes.
million people.
Obviously, but how how was it that these mega cities, these very big cities, took a place in history and in geography? Why? It's their the
Yeah, yeah,
economic
right.
situation. I
That's
must earn money,
it's a good
and I
question.
must
Yeah,
go from a village to the big city and earn money.
right. Yes,
And they want to earn life, and they don't want
yeah,
the way of being of the big
yeah.
cities.
Mhm.
This is the Mayan situation of some village, not all,
Right.
because also you have people that indigenous people that they want to have money and they want to buy things and
Of
they
course.
want to
Yeah.
travel a lot and all that. But they are transcultured. It was a cross-cultural problem. They wanted the way of being that Occident offer. But the problem is that Occident failed in the way of being, because if not, we wouldn't have wars like we have. We are having ecological catastrophes nearly,
Hmm.
and in. We don't know what is going to happen to our oceans, to the seas, and the rains, and also the climate changes a lot.
Yeah.
Also,
So
I
I have
mean,
another question for you. And we're almost out of time, so this may be the
yeah,
last little bit before
I
we
understand.
wind down. Um, this is all really interesting, and I'm sure some of our viewers have had experience with indigenous communities, and many have not. We see it
Mhm.
on television and we hear, but
Mm.
so what would be if we accept that there are a lot of values from the indigenous societal template that would be valuable for the
Mm.
bigger society, the Western society?
Yeah,
Um, what would be the best way, do you feel, to be able to transmit some of that or to facilitate that
yes,
transmission of wisdom and practice of thousands of years,
yes,
into our society? Other than, I mean, a little documentary kind of conversation like this could be a help.
yes.
What
Yes,
else?
yes. The main situation is that we can learn a lot, and they can learn a lot of us also. For instance, women learned how to use condoms or
Yeah,
preservatives,
condoms.
because they didn't want to have 10 uh, children. They wanted to have five, and we want to have five, not more than five. And they began to use the preservatives or the
So I'm just going to, yeah, repeat the
yeah,
question again, because
sorry,
I'm curious. What would be the best way that you and myself, who can see this value in indigenous societies,
yeah,
to facilitate the transmission or the education of the bigger society,
yes.
so that our Western society could benefit from some of these ideas and
Well,
practices?
if you go there, you can go as a tourist, and you can learn a lot in 1 week.
Okay. Yeah.
if you if you if you know how to see and how to
Ah,
hear. Yes,
right.
you are not going to record them, you are not going to photograph them, you are going to listen to them, to see
Hmm.
how they live, their way
Right.
of living,
Yeah.
how they use the time, how they use the space,
Yes.
how they talk between them, and we don't, because what's happening between us is that one friend has a problem, and you tell him, "Why don't you go to the therapist?"
Mhm.
And they wouldn't say that. They would say what we said 50 years ago. Tell me, I'm
Mhm.
here to hear you.
Right.
I want to hear you. I
I think,
have 2 hours, 3 hours, four
yeah,
hours. I have the weekend to
yeah,
hear you. Nowadays, even in the weekend, what do we say? Go to the therapist. More than 5 minutes of problem, go to the therapist. Did you go to the therapist?
right.
How? Why didn't you go to the therapist? And besides, it's a very small problem, but we don't want to hear problems. We want entertainment. We want Netflix.
Yeah.
We want another
Okay.
thing.
Well, I think this is a lovely way to finish our dialogue. I like to
Okay.
call these an authentic dialogue or conversation rather than interview, but that note of really learning to listen. And that could apply to listening to ourselves, listening to our body, listening to Mother Nature. And
Okay.
if we have a chance to interact with First Nations people or los pueblos originarios, as they say, the original peoples in
Yeah.
Spanish, that we listen, we watch and we listen. We don't say too much, but we keep our ears open and our eyes open and our heart open to be able
Yeah.
to really perceive and learn. So thank you
Talking
so
about
much. Yeah.
no, no, yes, okay.
Did you want to say
The
one more
last
thing? Yeah.
the last thing,
Yeah.
talking about heart open,
Yes.
they are very, very heart open. Yes,
Yeah.
they are very not too much rational. They
Right.
are affective. They have
Yeah.
you feel them,
Yeah.
you know,
There's a
you feel
somatic
them, and
presence, right?
they feel you,
Yeah.
and that's wonderful. This the last thing. In my city, I feel alone
Mm.
some days in the week.
Sure.
And I didn't, and knowing a lot of persons, I feel
Hmm.
alone.
Yeah.
There, what happened to me, every time I went is that I didn't know what is to feel alone. You don't feel loneliness.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know it's magic. You don't know. I don't know nowadays why, but you are in a context,
Hmm.
in a time and in a space that is very
Hmm.
different, and you begin to feel you are important to the other. And it's like
Hmm.
magic. And then when you think a bit, yes, you are important. You are a visitor, and you are very important for them
Right.
because they feel what mm, uh, your attempt to learn from them,
Yeah.
and they want to learn from you and interaction,
Of course. Yeah. Right.
and that's wonderful.
Well, thank you for sharing that profound experience that you had among the Mayan people, and perhaps we'll have you back someday and you can share more. There are lots of other
Yes.
aspects of what you do in this world. I know you're
Okay.
a member
Yes.
of the Baha'i faith,
Mhm.
and the current work that you're doing in your Aires neighborhoods. So thanks a lot, Daniel. Hasta la vista, amigo.
Yes.
Y,
Thank you, Hugh.
okay. Hasta luego.
Bye bye.
Bye.